We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. I'm Joe Solo, and on the 2nd of May 2022, Steve White, Kev Titterton and myself set out to walk from Scarborough to Robin Hood's Bay along the Cleveland Way. The cause was We Shall Overrun, an offshoot of We Shall Overcome, an artist-led response to the poverty being inflicted on the most vulnerable in our communities by government policy. Since 2015, We Shall Overcome has raised somewhere in the region of £750,000 worth of help for food banks, soup kitchens, homeless outreach, community support, domestic violence units, refugee networks and youth projects. But our primary fundraising source being gigs, once COVID came along we had to get creative. And so We Shall Overrun was born. We Shall Overrun involves combining miles run, walked, wheeled, swam, even knitted, until collectively we'd circumnavigated the globe. Which we did. Twice. After that, the decision was made to march the 250,000 miles to the moon, and it was to this end Steve, Kev and myself embarked upon our pilgrimage that day in May. That's us there. Left to right, 2 songwriters and a poet. Or if you like to be more prosaic, a retired firefighter, a washing machine repairman and a Royal Mail engineer. Either way, it was our job to put our best foot forward for the cause. For me, that's my left foot. My right foot being dogged by an arthritic big toe, the result of an injury sustained playing my last Sunday League football match over 20 years ago. For Steve, it could be either. For one of the fire service's most stringent requirements is that applicants must have 2 perfectly symmetrical feet. Otherwise, how could they be expected to climb a ladder straight? And Kev, who turned up with 2 walking sticks, the type with prongs on the end that make you look like you've forgotten your skis, doesn't have a best foot, but he put one forward anyway. It was all about this woman, Pauline Town. Pauline runs a pub called The Station in Ashton-under-Lyne, and every day that pub feeds up to 150 people at the door. She makes Christmas happen for almost 2,000 children, isolated adults, asylum seekers and street homeless. And she has housed literally hundreds of people by knocking on doors until the answer stops being no. We absolutely love Pauline. And we made a promise that we'd have her back no matter what. And we'd keep those food parcels flowing even through lockdown, when the pub was shut and she couldn't even pay the rent and was at risk of becoming homeless herself. And we kept that promise, collectively, together, through showing a little bit of socialism in action, through utter madness like this. Welcome, dear viewer, to 3 Shall Overcome.
Right, you catch us about a third of the way along our journey. I've still got the other 2, they're just off camera, there they are. They haven't given up and gone home there. Kev's relied on his walking sticks now, which... Did you bring skis as well? Me and Steve's probably going to get jealous in about a mile's time. But we figured that we're about to embark on... We're at sea level, as you can see. There we are. And we're about to go up 900 feet. And we're going to talk about party politics. And we'll figure that we'll run out of puff from the climb before we run out of puff with the argument. But we'll see. Anyway, we'll begin all that off. The Conservative Party, Steve. Thoughts?
Right. probably the worst group of politicians in terms of ability I think I've ever seen in my life. And I don't think that's any mistake either. I think Boris Johnson deliberately has surrounded himself with loyalists with no concept of whether they're good at their jobs or not, because he's not good at his. And I think that plays out in our daily lives.
Well, it definitely does. As we were saying as we were going down the hill. Plenty of people, when you get talking to in a workplace, will say, well, I don't really do politics. And then you counter that by saying, yeah, well, politics is doing you. And then you get into a discussion about class warfare, and then they switch off and go back to the mini cheddars. I said I wouldn't.
But you may be able to get them back on to talk to them about lies and being lied to, because no one likes being lied to.
No one likes being lied to.
And that's how the Tories do it in the media. So, no, we're not lying to you. We've got this other preposterous reason for what we just did, and we were going to expect you to believe that instead. But if you can cut through that and say, look, of course they're lying to you about whatever trivial thing it happens to be. And it's kind of like why Partygate's important in a way, because they lied to us. They lied to us consistently for 2 years.
Yep.
And it might be, they might say, we need to put that behind us now. Don't you know there's a war on?
Oh, God.
But it shows the world who they are. They're people who make rules for other people, not for themselves.
Yeah, they don't need to make rules for themselves because they're the people who make the rules, and they have to make rules for people who don't keep rules. And the people who don't keep rules are the people who they make rules for, and that's us. And they don't have to keep the rules that they make for the people who don't keep the rules because they went to Eton. And when you're born into privilege like that, it doesn't matter whether you keep rules or not, because rules are for other people.
Did you see me catching this?
Why did we even start this subject?
I think that's what singles them out, particularly, is their attitude to rules and other people is worse than I've ever seen or experienced.
Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely right. And I think I really hate the term post-truth. It's not post-truth, it's a fucking lie. And when you can dismiss fact and say, no, that's not true, then really all bets are off. You touched on something when we were talking last night. You said we're living in a post-hypocrisy world.
Yeah.
And I found that really interesting.
I'm going to think some more about that. But I don't think that's bad in terms of an analysis, because they are all hypocrites, telling you they're not in a very hypocritical way.
Yeah.
And it's working.
People accept it. The majority of people seem to accept it. And they also say that the alternative for Corbyn was untrustworthy. I don't get that.
Yeah, that's it. You know, you have to vote for Boris Johnson because you can't trust that Corbyn, can you?
Well,
you can trust the liar who lies all the time because everything he says is going to be a lie, but you can't trust the person who looks like he's telling you the truth because he must be lying. Good morning. We're setting the world to rights, don't mind us.
It's all right, carry on. I'm glad you are. Someone needs to do it.
We lived through 4 years where I think you really saw the establishment for what it is, and you really saw class war for what it is. You saw a socialist elected to the top of the Labour Party, and every single tool in the establishment's arsenal turned against him until it was finished. You saw absolutely everything. You saw their teeth bared. I've never seen anybody abused in the way that Jeremy Corbyn was abused over that period of time. And since his departure from the leadership, the way that his supporters have been abused has been horrific as well. And that is the establishment doing what the establishment does. It didn't want a socialist as a Prime Minister. And even if he'd have got to be Prime Minister, there's absolutely no way that an establishment body like the Houses of Parliament was going to vote itself socialist. So that shows you that while politics might not be for you, politics is certainly coming for you. Or am I just exaggerating?
You're not, but this isn't about Corbyn. This is about ideas
It is.
and ideals and what he stood for. Because what he stood for, by and large, is what we stand for.
Yep.
And what we think. Which makes us as dangerous as Corbyn.
Which, in fairness, was his argument all along.
Yeah.
I'm not speaking for me, I'm speaking for you. And he's right. They want to kill the ideas. They don't want those ideas permeating into the popular consciousness, because those ideas are the opposite of what they want to achieve with a society that they run and control. Dangerous subjects to do whilst trying to scale the heights of these steps. But at the same time, I'd rather die than stop talking about it. So here we go. Have we lost Kev?
He's here. He's over to help you now.
Well, you're all right, mate. You want to stop at top? It's a good place to have a wee rest.
Well, we and a rest.
Yeah. that looked like the most painful part of it all.
Oh, shit.
But yeah, I think I don't like to say the Corbyn project because it makes it about him. It's quite right. What, in essence, we managed to get socialist ideas into the national consciousness for 4 and a bit years.
So we could call it the 2017 manifesto.
Yeah, okay. We managed to get it into the popular consciousness until the Labour conference of 2018 when they ran. Yeah. So it's not about that. It's about killing those ideas and about the people who are not willing to let those ideas die because we think those ideas were right. And that's why we continue to fight for them and to battle on. Because, well, it's the old quote, isn't it? You can cut down the flowers, but you can't stop the spring.
It's not necessarily us, though, is it? That holds on to Corbyn. It's when I'm arguing with people, talking about the state of things and why they're accepting it. It's them that bring Corbyn, because they go down that. Well, it could have been worse if Corbyn got it. It's a bit like that sort of Python. Life of Brian, what did the Romans ever done for us? It's like that sometimes. You're listening to people.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
But that's where the manifesto actually came in really handy. So people that didn't like Corbyn, by and large, because what the media and the right-wing press and commentators had to say about him. Okay, which of his ideas in this book do you really object to? These things will all make your life and our lives better.
And that made it a little bit easier, didn't it, for a time, the 2017 manifesto. But as Chip passed us the other day, the far right organising on London estates with leaflets around housing and how you can't get housing and whose fault it is because you can't get housing. The reason you can't get any housing is because nobody's building any. The country needs a massive programme of council house building. It needs to provide homes for the people that live here. It needs young people to be able to get on and have places of their own and live and thrive, and then they'll get the wind in the sails. And you change people's environment, you change your entire outlook.
That and landlordism.
Yes.
Yeah. There are lots of properties, but they're owned by not enough people.
No, it needs to be council house building. It can't be affordable housing. Because how is it affordable housing when it costs £250,000?
Yeah, well, that's it. It's affordable in quotation marks. It just means a percentage of the market rate. That doesn't mean that people who earn a modest income can afford to live there.
Well, I mean, if you took every house in London that was owned by a Russian oligarch away, surely you could house most of the people who need an house. It might be in a glass dome penthouse thing, but...
Well, okay, throw in the royal palaces as well, and you could probably house most of the country's homeless. Never mind host most of London's homeless. It's about who owns the property and how it's distributed.
Yeah.
And landlordism has never been worse. And
no, Pauline will vouch for that. She's got crisis after crisis of people, landlords charging absolutely exorbitant rents because of an housing shortage on places that are literally falling down. The damp ridden, the people in there
often got health complications themselves, their lives are falling away fast because the only property they can get and that they're paying through the nose for is an unhealthy environment. This is proper Victorian shit.
Well, that and the strengthening of the law in the landlord's favour that allows a no-fault eviction.
Yeah.
It says, you know what? I can get someone in who's going to pay more rent than you,
yeah.
so I'm going to say bye-bye to you, even though you've been the perfect tenant.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't see that pretty much anywhere else in the world.
No, it's a peculiarly English thing, and then to turn round and try and organise hatred against it, but are using a housing shortage, using landlordism in order to turn workers against workers just because they've got a different colour skin or they speak a different language is appalling.
Well, that's it. Well, why haven't you got a nice home you can afford to live in because there's a migrant living in it?
Yeah.
No, there ain't, mate. There really isn't.
But no, it's like you say, it's a frightening thing, and he does appear to have surrounded himself by people who are either up to their necks in corruption or just almost comically inept, so that there's nobody can challenge him.
Yeah, because they're 100% loyal, which is why they got promoted into those important roles in the first place.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like Dominic Raab. He can't even stay on his own message when his own message was pretty poor to start with. Now, he just doesn't have any skills as a politician, even in terms of putting his own manifesto into practice.
That's not a bad view behind us, is it? See, we were down at the bottom of that before.
Well, that's a bit.
And we're still breathing.
We often puffed our way through an argument, but I think some points were made. No, I totally agree. I think the lack of talent around him is, and the lack of any sort of ideology beyond getting what we can out of this, and bumbling on through and blaming somebody else and something else it's palpably frustrating to watch, because it's somebody who's in control who clearly isn't, and he loves crises. He deliberately creates chaos in order to ride in like a white knight and solve it.
Yeah, I think even Dominic Cummings said that about him at one point, didn't he? After their relationship all went wrong, this is how he does it.
Yeah.
He lets it all go wrong and deliberately fails to make decisions until there is just one binary choice to make, and then makes it, because that appears to demonstrate leadership.
Yeah, and it's leadership. Yeah.
I'm the man in charge, and I made a decision because there were no other options, because I left it so late to make a decision.
Yeah, and Kev's quite right. You alluded to it at the top. There's a lot of working class people who think Boris is one of us, despite the fact he went to Eton and he talks in that plummy accent. Apparently, he's still one of us.
He exploits the same niche that Nigel Farage did.
Yes.
That I'll say the things that no one else will say. Yeah. The thing that you're too scared to say out loud because of political correctness, I'm not afraid to say.
Yeah, I speak truth to power.
Yeah.
Well, mate, you are power.
From the day you were born. But he's also, and the whole edifice is supported by a client media.
Yeah.
The likes of which I don't think we've seen before, that has developed over the last few years. I mean, the Rwanda thing that we were talking about the other day, I do, in the interest of doing it so you don't have to, because I'll write a song about what happened about it later, I do put myself through Nick Ferrari's show on LBC most mornings. And after Priti Patel had announced this policy of sending the refugees, migrants is their word, refugees is our word.
Thank you for correcting that.
The refugees crossing the channel to Rwanda, not for processing, because if their asylum application is successful, they've just achieved asylum in Rwanda. He was saying on his show that it had been an immediate success, because in the previous 8 days, not a single refugee had crossed the channel. And thankfully, he got a caller from Care for Calais very soon afterwards and said, "Have you seen the weather? No one crosses the channel in this weather, and that's the only reason." And I tuned in again this morning, because in the last couple of days, there have been about 300 refugees in small boats taking that really difficult crossing across the channel in order to try and get here and seek asylum. And rather than saying, well, clearly I was wrong, his argument was, Well, we need to start sending them to Rwanda. We haven't started sending them to Rwanda quickly enough. This policy will work if only we do it. And that's what I mean.
Yeah,
He's going to support the government policy, whatever, because it's his ideology too. And there are lots of journalists like that who are pretending to offer a balanced view, and it's the last thing they're offering.
No, what they're offering is the same sort of propaganda, which for the purposes of songwriting, propaganda does rhyme with Rwanda, Steve, if you needed any help.
We just make a note of that.
Lol's going to post on there that he already knows a song about that. Lost my train. No, is a glaring example of it, but it's there in everything, isn't it? From the sort of drip thread talking to you like your kids propaganda that you get on the 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock news, to the sort of voices they bring in to create like arguments on both sides just so they can get listeners and viewers on 24-hour news. It's polarizing society in a way that means that you cannot debate points on anything, because if you say something that remotely resembles the other side, then you must be completely in league with them. So it forces people to take sides. It forces people into ever deeper trenches, and that's not how the world changes for the better. And we seem to be on a steady, slow descent into making it worse because we're allowing them to dig our trenches.
Just part of it.
Anything.
Kind of. But that is your post-fact stuff, really, isn't it? That is giving equal weight to the facts and people who don't like those facts.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That perfectly said. Yeah. It is. Yeah. You put forward a fact, and it's no longer allowed to stand on its own as fact. It has to be questioned and taken to pieces, and taken to pieces in such a way that if it's done with that kind of populist slant that ticks enough of people's boxes, that becomes the fact.
Well, I mean, I'm going to go back to that original phone-in with Nick Ferrari, because that's precisely what he did with the caller from Kev Titterton. Is he said, yeah, but there were loads of people coming in November, and I bet the weather was worse in November than it is now, so you can't be right. Although what she was saying was 100% supported by the facts. She wasn't presenting him with her opinion at all. He said, well, my opinion is different and it carries equal weight to yours. In fact, it's better because it's my show.
Yeah. More people have heard my voice, more people listen to my voice, more people trust my voice, therefore what I say must be true. Yeah. Nah, it's a dangerous place to exist, and there's no easy answer to it, but you can't fight that kind of organised propaganda at that level because they just own everything. So you can't take it on. You kind of got to work out what's your version of that.
Yeah.
And that's not an easy ask.
No, I need to dig it out again, but I saw someone tweet the other day about how much of the world around us, Global, the company that owns LBC, actually owns.
Yeah.
And things like billboard advertising and all sorts. It's a huge corporation with real reach into shaping the nation's opinion.
Yeah.
Quite scary, really.
Oh, it's scary stuff. And it's like it's Gramsci on steroids, isn't it? That's what it is. Before, at least, it was subtly done. But no, it's mighty hard to combat. But that is the struggle of our age, Steve, I think.
Well, and if Operation Red Meat becomes a success, then so long as Johnson and his cronies in power, it's only going to get worse.
Yeah. So then, opinions on the Labour Party?
Well, the purge has been a very uncomfortable and unpleasant thing. And it seems to me that the Labour Party is back in that we need to be elected first and then worry about socialism afterwards, which, I don't know, doesn't really go very far with me.
I do, it's bollocks.
Seen that before.
Yeah, but that argument with Tony Blair, though.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
get
the
in and then
problem is that's the success story that they point at.
yeah.
But you see, Thatcherism was a series of skirmishes, right? Throughout the 1980s, Thatcherism was a series of skirmishes with the organised working class. And New Labour basically introduced the concepts of Thatcherism into every single government department and made the whole system it wasn't a move to the left. It wasn't socialism. There weren't tax credits, weren't redistribution of wealth. They were subsidising companies who didn't have to give a pay rise because the government was doing it. It's twisted in such a way that really makes me angry. Probably as angry as the Tory thing, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, I stayed in the Labour Party until the first of those pledges to keep Corbyn's positions intact was broken, and then I just knew the other 9 would be a matter of time and the witch hunts would be starting. So I left at that point. So I'm absolutely no danger to the Labour Party whatsoever, not even on a voter register.
Well, I still am a member, purely because I live in the Inconspicuous constituency,
Right,
which over 2 elections became a Tory marginal,
right.
and there's still a fight to be had getting him out if he doesn't run away by the time the next election is called. But this video may see me expelled anyway by the sounds of things.
Well, we could always release it after the next general election.
I lasted longer than you, Joe, but I did eventually kick out.
Yeah.
And just use that money for things like what Pauline does.
Yeah,
I feel I can't change things at the top, and I can, I know my back's the same again, one life at a time, but I just feel like I can chuck my hard end a little bit towards changing things from bottom up.
Oh, totally. I transferred my sub straight from Labour Party to Sea-Watch, so it's I know £5 a month or whatever it is. He's not going to pluck many people from the Mediterranean, but I'd sooner do that than I would get some leaflets with Starmer's face and a Union Jack on it.
Yes. And I think the sad thing is, for all of the kind of forensic epithets, he really seems a bit lost.
I think so too. I don't think he's. I don't think he knows where to pitch himself. I don't think he's got any policies. I don't think he's got any strategies. And I think the Labour right are just happy that they're back in control. I don't think they need any policies or strategies or any emphasis on anything. They're just kind of waiting for Johnson to implode. But I can't see that coming anytime soon. I think if anybody's going to get rid of Johnson, it's going to be the Tories.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And the party will make a decision before the next election whether they think it's going to be Johnson or whether they're going to have a fight amongst their various factions to see who it's going to be.
Yeah.
They have a machinery that's very good at getting elected, and just not being a Tory isn't enough. You need to be able to demonstrate to people how their lives are going to be better collectively as a society if they vote for you.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm not seeing that, I'm afraid.
No, I'm not seeing that. I think lying to the country or appearing to lie to the country does not preclude you from getting into office if people are worried about what's the money in their pocket. I mean, the 2005 general election was after we'd gone to war in Afghanistan and Iraq, and everybody knew, despite the fact it hadn't been proven yet in some kind of court, but everybody knew those dossiers were way out there.
Yeah.
The weapons of mass destruction hadn't been found, and we knew we'd been lied to as a country, and yet Labour was still back in office, albeit with a reduced majority. They were there because the country, as long as they've got money in their pockets, by and large, doesn't mind being lied to, because that's what they expect of politicians, which is another story.
Yeah, and again, the talk show hosts of this world, the mainstream journalists are saying, "Oh, you've never told a lie."
That's not the point, though, is it? No. Yeah, that was the argument. That was the argument against. It's not even misleading Parliament, is it? It's outright lying.
Yes.
Well, haven't you ever told a lie? He's only doing what the rest of us do. Trying to turn it back into his one of us argument, as if
As if lying was somehow a fucking English virtue.
Yeah, well, they overstepped the mark, didn't they? By talking about it was fabricant, wasn't it? So, well, you know,
Yeah.
nurses all had a beer in the staff room after
Yeah,
work.
that didn't go down
and
well, did it?
teachers did. No, they didn't. I don't know who you think we are, but no.
No, I think by and large, we were doing everything we could, particularly in that first lockdown. There was a lot of fear about, and it was a scary time for everybody, particularly if you're on the sort of like the kind of the vulnerable or the critical list.
Well,
And
like I told you, I stuck to rules, stayed in as I was supposed to. You know, it was no hardship to me. I didn't lose anyone and miss seeing them at the final breath in hospital, all them sort of horrendous things you hear. But I stuck to rules as I was, you know, as a citizen should.
Yeah.
But I did go after the first lockdown. Well, I think that's the first. Anyway, I did go as one of the only 7 people allowed in to Chris Parsons' funeral because Sandra asked me to speak and say something.
Yeah.
And that was awful for her. Because outside there were a lot of people. There is, you know, he did what do you call it, walking football. He had a walking football side and all that stuff. And even though he's like come from London, he made lots of mates up here. So he got loads of people stood outside, all socially distanced. And the thing is, there weren't as many people to say ta to him as there should have been.
no,
And that
we
was
need
hard
to do that
miss.
properly.
Really
We need a
hard
We
for
Shall
her.
Overcome event to do that for Chris.
Sorry?
We've got one for Dave Wood over in Ulverston on the 21st of May, and we lost a lot of people. We're trying to get one organised for Steve Goodall. We need to do something for Chris Parsons.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that would be really nice.
Well, like I say, you know, what Sandra went through, having to sort of see him out that way and not being able to ask all her family or his or.
Yeah.
And then all the
While they
time,
were
they're
ferrying suitcases full of wine into Downing Street.
Yeah, they're taking piss, and see, people seem to accept this, and
Well, I think the people who accept that are the people who didn't lose anyone.
yeah, maybe.
I think there's an awful lot of anger around the people that did, because I had a customer who'd been married for 53 years and never got to say goodbye to her husband. He died in a care home because they brought it in with a hospital patient. Died on his own. She couldn't get to see him, didn't get to hold his hand, didn't get to say goodbye. And for an elderly lady, there was a hell of a lot of anger there.
Yeah.
And I think that your level of anger towards what's happened at Downing Street with Partygate and what have you just depend on the scale of your actual loss during the pandemic.
Suffered like that lady you're talking about. What about their health? Because you know everyone suffers. You know, grieving's terrible. Everyone suffers loss. But what would you do? What did you do? So her health, particularly her mental health, thinking that she wasn't there to hold his hand.
Well,
thinking that she wasn't there after all these years, she'd kind of let him down. She probably felt.
Yes, and she didn't have family locally, so basically, you're travelling washing machine engineer. You got the tears and the anger and the and which I don't mind. It's kind of what we're for. I meet a lot of people who don't.
Well, she was lucky you turned it. She was lucky you came to the door, really, weren't you? Rather than somebody who don't give a shit.
Well, I don't know. I find it hard to understand how anybody can not have a little bit of the heart broken by that story. You know? She was so angry and in floods of tears, and nobody to really vent that out to. And like you say, that has massive effects on her physical and mental health as well. And the knock on from that, we're yet to see the full extent of the damage that it's done to society, both physically and sociologically and psychologically.
Yeah.
But
in terms of the lying, the signs were there right from the start. If you remember, not long after the first lockdown was announced, it was Mother's Day.
Yeah.
You remember Johnson was asked, "Are you going to visit your mother?" And he started off saying no, and then I'm in an R in, and everybody knew he was going to break the rules.
Yeah.
But it's a man of a weird record of lying as well, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Yeah, you've had more experience of him than most, haven't you? As your mayor for so long.
Yeah. And, you know, not being afraid to use executive power in order to make the lives of Londoners worse.
Yeah.
You know, 10 fire stations, 27 fire engines, 500 firefighters' jobs. He overruled his own fire authority and issued a mayoral direction to make that happen. Purely ideological.
Yeah.
And then tried to tell the authority that would make London safer.
And how did that go?
He was challenged by a Labour member in the Assembly called Andrew Dismal. He said, how can you say that cuts to line of fire brigade will make London safer? This was captured on video. I think it went out live. Just told him to sod off. And that was the end of the debate.
Yeah, I remember that footage. Yeah.
The same sort of people even tried to then push Grenfell onto fire service.
Well, you've got
Well, unless you're Rees-Mogg, in which case you blame the people that died.
Yeah.
we've got a bench we're going to sit on. That's a bit tired.
Well, that's a bit worrying.
Absolutely.
I've spoken about this on the route before. We're going to sit on this bench dedicated to Stella Chan. It's 1966 to 2013. And obviously, the view from this bench, not of that gnarly old tree stump there, behind Kev.
I'll just fall out at work.
But of the coast around North Yorkshire here, meant something to Stella. And, you know, regardless of which way she voted, Stella's sharing the same view that we did. And at the end of the day, it was all human beings, whether we get these things right or whether we get these things wrong. And it's important sometimes to remember that nobody's evil because they think different to you. They're just really badly wrong and need sorting out.
And so there we have it. A familiar tale of three middle-aged men putting the world to rights as only middle-aged men can. Done so successfully that the transition was barely noticeable at all. But a good day out was had by all, and aside from one of our number complaining bitterly about blisters when he had blister plasters in his rucksack but was trying to be a man about it, yeah, that was me, we arrived unscathed and none the worse for wear. Pauline stayed open, we clocked up more miles for We Shall Overrun, and we were right about Boris bloody Johnson. You can never trust a Tory, even if you are one. Farewell, dear viewer, and for every raised fist and helping hand out there, keep on keeping on. Always. We shall overrun.